Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another special for Discussions episode. Today we have Adrian from Wombat. So, Adrian, you want to do a quick introduction?
Hi, thanks for having me, Jack. And so my name is Adrian. I've been in the crypto space for quite a while. I actually got in touch with Bitcoin back in late 2010, 2011, early 2011 through online poker. I used to play online poker a lot.
Hmm.
The online poker community picked up Bitcoin very early, right? So there was these crazy things happening that in forums people were selling 1,000 Bitcoin for $400 and stuff, which I was just basically watching from the sideline. And then later, I actually got into Bitcoin, bought Bitcoin the first time early 2013, and then went on to work with blockchain professionally back in 2016.
Oh, okay.
And then we actually founded Chainwise, which is still the current name of the mother company of Wombat, early 2018, to basically keep doing blockchain full time.
I
And
see. I see.
that's mostly about myself. I have a background in mathematics and computer science. Maybe if that's of any interest.
I think that would be that's an interesting note. So, you are currently in Berlin. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. What's how's the blockchain scene in Berlin looking like?
Well, blockchain, yeah, Berlin itself calls itself blockchain capital, which is a bit crazy because maybe it's a bit too arrogant from us in Berlin.
Yeah.
Um, well, it's a lot of deep tech and protocol business, and it's a lot of Ethereum community, right?
Mhm.
Obviously, we've got Polkadot here and Gnosis and those guys. So there's a really strong foothold of Ethereum here, um, but also a lot of protocol business. But to be honest, hardly anybody. Now it's been changing over the last year or so, but fewer projects who are actually building end customer solutions, right? Like ourselves. So that's a bit of a pity. And another pity is that EOS has a very weak position here in Berlin, so hardly anybody is talking about EOS um, or building on EOS. So
Mhm.
we're a bit lonesome here.
So that gets into my next question. So why did you decide to build on EOS? I mean, obviously, Ethereum has a much bigger ecosystem. Um, as a developer, you want to devote your energy towards, the ecosystems that have the more users, right? So why EOS?
Long story again. I've been a Steam user, like Steam the
Okay.
blockchain,
Nice.
for a long
Same here.
time, right? So I actually got on Steam back in 2017.
Okay.
Um, and been following that. And then obviously the EOS ICO started,
Yeah.
and Dan had moved on, and so I was basically following that ICO, and I kind of really didn't really like the structure of the ICO,
Okay.
right? So I was hesitant to invest because I didn't like this perpetual way of running an ICO, but I
Mhm.
ended up investing just at least a tiny bit. So I was in EOS at least this little bit. So I was watching the mainnet launch then, and around that time we started building Chain Clash and thinking about Wombat. And the question was, so where will the space go in terms of gaming and like really consumer products on blockchain? And one thing that we really liked about EOS, apart from obviously the throughput, is the UX, right? Like the end user UX, which is built in on the first layer, where you can get synchronous responses to your requests, whether or not your
Yeah.
transaction is going in the next block, right? You get that synchronously within like 700, 800 milliseconds or so, right? And so this makes up for a much better UX, specifically when you talk about gaming, right? And we wanted to build games and be in the gaming space. So this is how we decided to try out EOS, and it worked pretty well, I guess. And yeah, this is where we are. It was also related to like the throughput and the performance, but one strong argument was actually the UX.
Mhm. That's very interesting that you say you were a Steam user. Did you like make frequent posts Did you make some money on posting on Steam? Because I tried, and
I
it wasn't very easy.
I made some money. I was a bit late to that party, to like the really big payouts. I never got like the $1,200 payouts, but it was fun. And lately, I've been in touch with some of the like long-term Steam community members, like with Leah um, and Luke and stuff, and that's been a lot of fun because I've always been just basically watching them from the sideline because I wasn't that active, but was fun meeting them. So it's a cool community. I still like the Steam, now probably Hive community, and
Yeah.
still been obviously watching that and participating every now and then, but not being like the super active person there.
The Hive, the Hive is where the real community is. I mean, Steam is kind of like a shell of the former home that that community used to reside. So that's my opinion of it, at least.
I I think it feels a bit liberating. It's funny that it needed that catalyst of Tron and Justin stepping in and
Yeah.
taking that over for like the big part of the community to move away and actually fork off, right? Or
Mhm.
whether you want to call it a fork or an airdrop or
Yeah.
whatever other words you might find. Um, but I think that there's a lot of potential now that this baggage is gone. So I'm really rooting for Hive now. It's hoping that it goes well.
Very cool. Was the idea of developing games on the blockchain, did that come from Steam? Because I know Steam like kind of had not like a huge community of game developers, but they were a small group that was trying to develop applications and games on top of it. Or is that like an idea that you have from somewhere else? And when EOS came along, you said, okay, block games on blockchain, that's gonna work.
Well, we were originally thinking about building it on Ethereum, right? Because it was the more natural choice. There was back then, I think, Steam Monsters was out already,
Yeah.
but apart from that, all the other games coming on Steam were yet to come. So we're actually thinking about what the best solution is. And I'm actually not that much of a fan of using Steam for arbitrary transactions. I mean, you can obviously run them like that, and
Yeah.
Steam Engine is such a cool project and stuff. But to us, it's always been we want to use something that works
Mhm.
for, or basically the best tool for the purpose, right? And EOS seemed like the best tool to build games on blockchain.
Cool, cool. We've been talking about games a lot, but we're actually here to talk about the Wombat wallet. So how did that fit into kind of what you were doing? Was it just because you needed to develop a solution to address some of the issues, or
Well, there was twofold. I mean, one was that we started building our own game. The other was that we were seeing that there's a desperate need of an easy onboarding solution in general. And
yeah,
this counts for basically any blockchain, but for EOS specifically. And I mean, everybody knows that, right?
yeah,
How difficult it was back in 2018 to create an EOS account. And I myself struggled. I was actually really happy that I had my Genesis account because I had it, right? And I could use it, and everything else was really painful.
yeah,
Um,
sure.
and we also saw that there was a big um, pushback from users that they didn't want to actually onboard onto EOS dApps and games because of that pain, right?
Mhm,
So we wanted to make it as easy as it gets to have like a real account on the blockchain where
mhm,
you can basically use any game. And so we wanted to stick to the existing standards. So that's why we were scatter compatible,
yeah,
right? And I mean, obviously, this comes with a drawback of people having to download something, but most people are used to that.
mhm,
And we wanted to make onboarding in that sense as easy as possible, specifically for users who are first-time blockchain users,
mhm,
right? All the advantages that EOS has with the resource system and the key system and the UX that only works if you can
if you
onboard
have
people
any,
very easily, and
yeah,
you can take away the pain of like buying RAM and staking CPU and net for them, right? And this is
yeah,
exactly how Wombat got born, where yeah, we want to enable everyday users. We're maybe not quite there yet because it's
mhm,
still pretty complex, right? But
The average
my
user,
mom,
average mobile phone,
the average user, like my mom or like whoever, right, who's not very tech savvy or blockchain savvy, to go ahead and enable them to be able to play games yeah, I mean we've always been fascinated by um, the overlap between blockchain and gaming because the 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 ownership aspect of assets which you can use and earn and utilize in games is so strong, such a strong value proposition of blockchain in like an existing industry. Um, but that obviously starts with having an easy solution to onboard yourself and also to keep your assets somewhere so that they actually are yours, right? If you have somebody managing your keys entirely, then what's the difference between that and using Steam, not the Steam blockchain, but
the Steam
the Steam
interface.
platform?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, I definitely think you guys are making the right moves, especially Scatter's have actually been having a lot of problem, and that's one of the reasons why I jumped onto Wombat. Because I know you guys from before, but I needed because I'm a power user, right? We do application development, and Scatter is kind of the standard for developing our applications. So you guys are kind of catering to a different market, but after like if you discover Wombat, the user experience is fantastic. I'm so glad you guys have an extension. What I remember when Scatter used to have a Chrome extension, and they got rid of it, and it was like,
Oh
why?
yeah.
Why?
Oh yeah. That was one of the main drivers that, I mean, we got a lot of questions. We started off with the Android app and then iOS, everybody building a wallet or whatever other app specifically with EOS knows that getting certified in the App Store is a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
So that took us a little bit longer. But at the same time, people were asking us, hey, can you make an extension that is easy to use? And so we made it, and it was a very simple one at first, right? But it's getting better and better in terms of functionality and closer to what we have in the Android app. And
what's the percentage of mobile app users and extension users? Are they like 50-50?
No, they're not 50-50. We have many more Android users. So Android is by far the biggest platform, but Chrome is really big. But also, we have a lot of users who use both Android and Chrome, right? Or iOS and Chrome, because they appreciate that they can use in a very easy way, can import their account into the Chrome extension and keep using it from there. I mean, we have a lot of users, for instance, playing Prospectors because it's like it's a desktop optimized game, right? So a lot of Prospectors users use the Chrome extension, but at the same time they play the mobile games like EOS Dynasty on their phones, obviously, because there is no way you can play EOS Dynasty on desktop, right? I think that's very cool because in the end, what you want is the interoperability between individual games on the same blockchain, or even later on multiple blockchains, right? But for that, you obviously need one place where these get together. So you basically need the assets to be on the same EOS account for them to be fully interoperable, so that you can earn a token there and stake it in another dApp right away, right? You don't want to like take care of them and transfer them to another account. So this is definitely nothing that you want to do. So for us,
is there any I mean, obviously you guys work with a lot of developer of the games. Is there like a compatibility issue between how the games are being created? Like currently, do you guys have to like keep adding on to the wallet to support these new functions, or do you think there's like a growing standard? Because again, like if game development is going to be like a big thing on EOS, I think there are going to be some aspects of it that has to be standardized, like NFT being one of them. So do you guys encounter these problems, or?
I had a bit of a audio problem. Maybe we can repeat the first part of the question because it didn't get across.
Yeah, for sure. So I was just saying, like, obviously you guys work with a lot of mobile game developers in general on the EOS blockchain. And for that industry, for that sector of the EOS economy to grow, I think there's got to be some standards set. And as you know, if you don't have that standard, as wallet providers, you guys have to kind of go in and step in and customize the wallet each time there's like a new thing that pops up. Is that a concern for you guys? Do you guys see things that are happening like that?
Um, I mean, on the compatibility point of view, like let's say with login, it's not that bad because
Mhm.
most standards are let's say okay, or let's say if a mobile app wants to offer multiple wallet logins, they basically just import their SDKs, right? And they mostly behave very similarly, and that works rather well. And we we don't see a lot of problems with mobile apps implementing SDKs, right? They typically offer 4, 5, 6 different wallet logins. It's not great that they have to do that, right? It would be nicer if there was one common standard, but it's not very painful in terms of technical issue. It's more of a user issue because obviously users need to know how they can log in, right? Um, so that that may be a problem. You mentioned the NFTs, the
Yeah.
NFT side. That is a huge issue,
Mhm.
right? The Ethereum space has such a huge advantage over EOS, especially when we're talking about gaming, because
Yeah.
of the very well developed standards for NFTs. And
Mhm.
starting from 721, but obviously everything else that's been built on top. Um, and EOS has been struggling with that a lot, right? Also, a part of that is also attributed to the resource system, I guess, because it's very expensive to all NFT data on chain, which obviously is also an issue for Ethereum. But there, everything is expensive. So for EOS, if you want to run many things on chain, then which is kind of a natural thing you would think you might want to do on EOS,
Mhm.
right? And you want to make everything an NFT.
Yeah.
We've been using dgoods, and because to us it seemed like the at that time like the more lightweight solution in
Mhm.
terms of how much it costs in terms of RAM to create an NFT. Um, but still, that's pretty expensive, right? I think at this point it's about probably $10 to $15 in RAM per NFT that you have to spend, right? So that's
Really?
yeah.
Wow.
Um,
Okay. So this is not like the cost of buying like an in-game item. This is just like the cost of storing an in-game item on
yeah,
the as an NFT on the EOS blockchain. Wow, that
yeah,
is very expensive.
yeah. So that is obviously super annoying about anything related to NFTs on EOS. And this is not the like end solution. And it's gonna get better, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we're obviously talking about all kinds of solutions, be it something like VRAM or
Yeah. Yes.
um, uh, maybe putting like standardizing that even further and putting it on protocol layer and stuff like that, right? So you can think about all kinds of things, but right now that's a huge pain, right? And also we've been in contact a lot with the folks from Pixios. We've just launched their gallery, right? It's
Yeah.
a really cool thing.
Yeah.
Um, but they also had their issues with like the NFT issuance and the costs associated with that. So that's a major pain here, and this needs to get improved. But obviously, we've been in touch with many people from like the DGoods community
Yeah.
about improving the standard and working it forward. And that yeah, that is definitely something that needs improvement.
I see. I see. Well, I mean, obviously, you would know since you are already the creator of a game that we'll get to in a bit. But I do want to go back to another point that we briefly touch, that I briefly touched, which is there's many different wallet providers in the space. You know, if you go to log into Nutex, I didn't even know how many wallets existed. So, do you guys see them as all as competitions? Do you guys see yourself? How do you guys see yourself fitting into this space, like this wallet provider space?
um, it's hard to say it's competition, right? Because our goal is not to be a wallet essentially.
Mm.
I've been talking a lot about gaming specifically because to us being a wallet is a prerequisite for well, enabling blockchain gaming to be seamless and really valuable and available for the masses, right? So we are basically building the wallet out of a necessity rather than the fact that we want to run a wallet business and compete with Meet One or Token Pocket or Scatter or whoever else. That was never the point, right? We just saw, okay, if that's supposed to go anywhere, you need a super easy onboarding, and this has to be free. You can't charge people depending on what the EOS and the RAM price is up to $4 or $5 up front for an account, and have them stake potentially hundreds of EOS just to sign a single transaction or a few transactions in a game, right? This was my original pain point back in like November, December 2018 when I was playing EOS Nights, and I had to stake like 300 EOS just to be able to play it properly, right? And I was super pissed off. And I back then I already had my accounts, right? So I didn't even have to create them. But then again, I consider myself a bit more tech savvy than the average person, like I guess. So to us, we don't really think that we're a wallet. We're more like this is part of our service, and we're now expanding that and more into the gaming space. So there's going to be more services which are directly related to games. This is also why NFTs are so important to us, right? For us, really, we want to make enjoying the benefits of blockchain inside of gaming as easy as possible. And whoever helps with that is actually our friend, right? Because I think we all have a common goal, and the market is we're so early in this market. And the market is so small. If you look at the user numbers, they're ridiculous compared to the traditional world, right? If you look at Clash Royale or AFK Arena or whatever with like 50 million plus downloads, and compare that to the 5,000 DAUs that EOS Dynasty now has on top of the DApp Radar rankings, right? That is ridiculous, and this is mostly related to well, probably two things. One is that those games currently are built towards a certain community, towards a certain target customer group, but also that accessibility isn't all that great, and that there isn't as much services around that. So we want to at least solve one of these problems, and this is where we're going. And whoever helps with that is we're always talking to them, and we're always happy to like join forces and like with the entire EOS community. I think everybody benefits if there's more people playing games based on EOS, right?
Yeah, no, I think you're 100% right. So, yeah, I mean, again, wallets such as still a pain in the ass to use, and getting EOS account is still such a pain. And I'm really, really happy with what you guys are doing with Wombat. And I think, some of the other stuff that you're offering on top of it, which is offering free CPU transactions, which is, I think, Wombat was one of the first ones to do that. So I want to lean into that a little bit more. As a game developer on EOS, and you guys are leaning into game development more and more, when you guys do launch a game in the future, will user account resource management be part of that game's design, or do you think that's still something that we should leave up to the user and kind of go back to the traditional blockchain model, where you have to pay transaction fees on Bitcoin, you have to pay gas fees on Ethereum, and you just kind of have to have stake EOS to enjoy the game?
I mean, I guess that probably depends on what kind of application you're talking about. But specifically when talking about games, look at how easy it is nowadays to buy a game, to access it, to start it, and like to get going in like the traditional gaming space. If you want to make any blockchain-based game appealing to any of those users, it has to be super, super simple. For those people, downloading a separate app is already a big ask, right? So that is not going to go away. That's not going to get better, right? So I think that, and this is also why we started this unlimited play program, where we take over resource costs even for the games, right?
Mhm.
So we basically we have this tier where we give users the possibility to sign arbitrary transactions. Let's say based obviously based on price, but currently it's 5 transactions for every free tier user per day, and they can sign any transaction. But on top of that, they can sign as many transactions as they want in all the unlimited play games. And
Mhm.
part of these games, we're basically just paying all the CPU for and the net, obviously, right? Um, and so these are kind of our unlimited play partners, where we make it super simple for the game developer also to provide free resources to their users, because I mean, obviously that's a commodity, right? They don't want to be taking care of that. That's not what you want to focus on when you're building a game.
Yeah.
Also, you don't want to be focusing on account creation. You want to be focusing on making the game most fun, or let people earn tokens in the most convenient or fun way, or whatever your game is about, right? This is something that we want to offer to everybody, and I think we're being quite successful with offering that. And originally we started out with a very, let's say, dumb model, where we would simply stake EOS for people so that they could sign resources, and we would increase the amount of staked EOS to them depending on their needs. So we had this resource manager thing, but as soon as first authorizer pays came out, we switched to that, and we are running a resource pool across all basically all users and dApps who are in the unlimited play program.
Mm-hmm.
So we envision that, yes, if anybody's interested, if the dApps don't want to, or the games don't want to take care of that themselves, then we can take over a resource for them. And on the other hand, if they want to sign whatever other transactions, like transferring tokens or mine ADOS or whatever they want, right? We will always provide for a few free transactions on top of that.
Well, I think using your transactions to mine EOS is a waste of time, but just my opinion.
It is. I honestly, I don't know why. Well, I do know why people are still doing it, and I mean, it's kind of obvious who's doing it, but
I think it was a genius marketing ploy, but it's run its course. It should just die.
And yeah, and that's one of the other big problems here, which kind of the community has arranged themselves with that issue, right? It's been half a year now, and we're all kind of fine with it now, because okay, then EOS, our transaction is like, you need to stake 15 EOS to sign 1 transaction per day. And Rex is cheap nowadays, so it's doable. But this has prevented the ecosystem from growing by a large bit, right? And we need to get back to a kind of a predictable and sustainable resource price, so that it's EOS mainnet is actually attractive for dApps to onboard themselves, because they don't want to struggle with that. It's that should be a solved problem, right? And that's also why I can totally understand that many projects have moved to EOS side chains, or whether you want to call them side chains. But I can totally understand that, because it's it's a low-hanging fruit there, and you don't run into that risk of not being able to pay for the resources. And I mean, some of the dApps have died because of that, because they weren't able or willing to pay for the resources. So that's one of the other major pains, I think, in the EOS ecosystem. And I'm actually surprised that this hasn't been solved yet. Originally, like when it all started with EOS back in November, everybody was like, okay, we need to solve that within like the first 2 or 3 weeks, or it's going to hurt EOS significantly. But, well, all the proposals were nice, but none of them got really implemented. I mean, the Rex issue obviously got solved, but it's actually a surprise that it hasn't been tackled yet, because I mean the fact that EOS price is now between $2 and $3, not between 5 and 6, it's probably at least partly can be attributed to that.
To the EOS, the EOS DDoS attack.
Yeah.
Okay.
I totally believe that.
Yeah. Well, this wasn't on the kind of list of topics that I wanted to ask you about. So, but I do want to, since you touched up on sidechains. So, does Wombat plan to support sidechains in the future? Is that something you guys are looking at?
I mean, basically, for us, EOS is fine as long as there's enough supply in terms of games on EOS, right? And precisely because of what we just discussed with resources being expensive and a lot of projects moving off of EOS, we obviously have to look left and right what else we want to do. And this will strongly depend on where we'll get supply in terms of games, right? And right now it looks like the Ethereum ecosystem in terms of games is still the strongest. So, I mean, I think we're one of the biggest EOS wallets right now, so we can contribute a significant amount of users to any other blockchain as well. And on the other hand, we want to keep our users happy and using Wombat, so they need a lot of games they can select from. And so we're definitely looking into other blockchains in general, and if that's EOS sidechains or whether that's Ethereum or any other technologies or chains, that's all dependent on where we see the best supply.
I see. So do you want to quickly talk about Chain Clash?
We can totally talk about Chain Clash.
Okay, so yeah, tell me about Chain Clash. I was just playing it the other day on the phone. It works much better on the phone than on the web. So
we have some strange issues with the formatting of the web view of the desktop web view sometimes. So it looks very weird, but it's optimized for mobile, obviously, and there's going to be a fix for that anyway. So Chain Clash is basically a collectible fighting game where you collect, we call them avatars, that belong to crypto clans. So it's essentially a game that's specifically tailored towards the crypto communities, and each avatar represents one coin or one crypto project, which is can be Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum, EOS, Tron, and the bad crypto guys with their bad coin. And the fun thing is that we have real people representing those projects in the game as well. So we make digital representations of, well, we call them celebrities, crypto celebrities or crypto influencers, like Brock Pierce, John McAfee, the bad crypto guys, Crystal Rose, and there's a bunch more who we still have in the pipeline. And those represent the coins in the game as well. So it's about actually having these and collecting these avatars, training them, making them stronger, and let them fight against one another, like in Pokemon. Mm-hmm. And it's a bit like taking crypto Twitter into a game where people can be competitive and settling their disputes about whether big blocks are better than small blocks or the other way around, kind of in a competitive game.
Yeah, I'm just gonna share my screen just for a little bit so people could see it. Again, as you hear Adrian say,
oh, that looks weird. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not optimized for the web. It does look a lot better on the mobile, but I can't show my phone screen very well. So I got my avatar. I actually have two because I have a different account, a free account actually from you guys on my mobile. So yeah, I mean, I'm playing around with it. Seems very cool. How long have you guys been working on this project?
We've been working on it quite a long time, actually, because one of the major things is actually the digital representations and the 3D models of these avatars. Mm-hmm. And what you see right now is basically only pictures of them. We're working on having animated sequences in the game very, very soon. It's going to come out within the next few weeks. So you'll be able to see your avatar fighting, and there's all kinds of things that we can do with these avatars because we have them in Unreal Engine models. So we can actually make them taller, smaller, thicker, leaner, more muscular. We can give them big heads. We can like do whatever you can imagine with them, right? So the idea is that we can morph them if they're well trained, so that they grow more muscles, or we can make them taller or whatever. So there's tons of features that we have in there. What we can do with these avatars. We just need to spend a little bit more time on polishing these things. So there's going to be fight animations where you can see like your avatar fighting against the other. I mean, there's additions of avatars of specifically our humans that are unique. So you will only, this will only exist once. So you'll be able to tell your avatar apart from any other avatar.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not gonna play the game now, even though it's I have played it before. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. I really like the concept. I really like the idea that you have different blockchain personalities fighting against each other. I think they want to do that in real life, so maybe they could take out the anger on the virtual virtual reality and.
It's so funny because you see that all the time on Twitter, literally, or on Reddit.
Mm-hmm.
But we also saw that real life on a meetup in LA.
Oh, really?
Where Toned Vase was on the panel.
Yeah.
And apparently somebody supporting Bitcoin Cash was in the audience, and they were discussing and arguing about whether Bitcoin Cash was good or bad for Bitcoin, and whether that's whether forking off was a good idea, and whether big blocks are better than small blocks and stuff like that, and whether that makes the blockchain more decentralized or not.
Yeah.
And it was simply like 10 minutes watching crypto Twitter in real life, and we're like, this is exactly what this game is about, right? Because it's literally impossible to settle these disputes. It's always going to get there's always going to be believers in one or the other direction, and I find it really funny and fascinating, and I love following these whenever somebody tweets something out.
The drama.
Or I mean, it was kind of a similar drama now with Tron and Steam, obviously, right? So
even within EOS community, we have our tribalisms and feuds and fights, Twitter fights and Twitter drama. So
sure, very sure. I mean, we didn't want to introduce a lot of like kind of sub projects because it's already challenging enough to like try and form these communities so that they're so that you find commonalities between them, right?
Yeah.
But obviously, there's we can easily have smaller tribes under these clans that are forming, I don't know, BPs or whatever else it could be, right?
I will play that game. I will play that game. Fight to be the top 21. So
yeah, get most votes.
Yeah,
That's
exactly. With that, I think we're gonna start closing out the session. I do want to ask you to stay because I do want to chat to you a little bit afterwards as well. But before we go, I want to ask you, well, one, what are some of the things that happen on EOS or that's going to happen on EOS? Like things like, Block One started voting or what's the other one that I was thinking? Yeah, well, block voting is the big thing. Voice coming onto the blockchain. Some of the EOS VC investments into the gaming platform. So, what is the thing that's happening in the future, EOS future, that's kind of got you noticed? You're paying close attention to it and you're watching it closely.
I mean, to us, like I said earlier, we're mostly focusing on stuff that works and less on stuff that might work at some point, right?
Yeah.
Because the past has shown that it's difficult to predict when these things are coming and when they're going to have an effect and whether the effect is going to be the one that you wish.
Yeah.
right? I mean, with voice, that was the best example. The June 1st announcement and the anticipation of it, and the EOS price going up, and Block One buying RAM. I mean, for us, that was kind of a big pain back then, because both price was going up and RAM price skyrocketed. So suddenly we had to pay like 5 or 6 times the price for each free account, right?
Yeah.
So these things influence our daily business a lot, but they don't influence our kind of strategic decisions that much, because we're mostly focusing on, like I said earlier, are we seeing enough supply in terms of games on the platform? And obviously, EOS VC and their investments can help a lot with that, or the grant program. And we're typically in touch with most of the developers early on, right? Far before they launch, because obviously that's a very interesting partnership that you can create between a platform like Wombat and any game developer who is looking for, well, both access to users, but also an onboarding solution for new users. Obviously, we also allow game developers to promote their games on Wombat. So to us, that's a very strong partnership, because it's a win-win, right? If they're good games who make people stick around longer, that's good for everyone. That's good for the entire ecosystem. So this is what we kind of are looking forward most in terms of a business point of view. Obviously, we appreciate all the developments towards decentralization or better voting, or updates to the resource system. But for us, it would be the greatest science if the current problems get solved, both in terms of the CPU price, but also in terms of the NFT problem that we were talking about earlier, rather than I don't want to like make them smaller than they are, because there's a lot of good work being done, a great work being done there, right?
Yeah.
But to us, it simply on a day-to-day basis doesn't have as much of an impact as it does to others like block producers. We're mostly enabling users or people to use the blockchain. So for us, anything related to kind of really the usage is much more impactful than the theoretical or even practical background topics and technical topics that are going on. That said, obviously a lot of tooling helps a lot, right? But that's picking up, and there's been quite a lot of great development there. So I think that's mostly fine, and we're fairly happy with that. But like I said, the NFT and the resource issue.
So last thing, what can people look forward to coming either on Wombat or some of the games you guys developing, Chain Clash? Is there something big coming down the pipeline that people should know?
I mean, obviously, with Chain Clash, we just launched like about 3 weeks ago. So there's still a lot to come, a lot on the roadmap. With Wombat, there's going to be a ton of functionality specifically regarding gaming. So game analytics, gamer profiles. So all the stuff that people love in kind of the more traditional gaming space. So we're actually building strongly towards the entire gaming space. We don't want to entirely cut off everything else which is not gaming related. So there's always going to be the possibility to like interact and launch other dApps. But there's going to be a ton of functionality specifically related to gaming.
Okay, cool. So that's Wombat, and you can always find them on getwombat.io, and the game Chain Clash you can find at chainclash.com. And thank you very much, Adrian, for coming on, and I look forward to having you on again soon in the future.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having us.